Greetings! Welcome to the Thirsty Mage, the podcast that will never be accused of being anti-Square Enix. Welcome to the podcast, I'm David Lloyd, and this week is all about impressions, whether it's talking about Sword of Mana, the Game Boy Advance remake of Final Fantasy Adventure, or whether it's thoughts and observations about all the new and wonderful games that we're seeing at PAX West this year. After sobering up from his trip to the medieval pubs of Kingdom Come 2, here to provide the scoop on the most interesting games featured at PAX West, it's Jordan Rudick.
If sobering up is the same as just like trying to catch up on sleep and not be exhausted every day, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at right now. It's always crazy this first week of September because we got the long weekend, which is PAX, and then the kids are now in school, so we're starting school, so it's back to school, and my wife's back to school, and she's in a new place. And funny enough, I'm actually back to school as well. Normally, September and the fall is when I take my vacation, but this year I'm moving my vacation around. So I actually am working through the fall and spring, and then next summer I'll have my normal vacation kind of set up from then on. So yeah, back to school for everybody, and man, I as fun as PAX West is and was, there's a feeling of I'm just still trying to catch up on sleep and everything like that. So yeah, lots to share for sure, but I do feel like I'm a little bit exhausted, kind of beaten up.
Yeah, in my experience over the past couple of months and even like the last few years, it seems like life just never slows down. It's just the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. It's like one of these days, I guess probably when I'm like in my 60s, 70s, I'll be able to, just sit down and catch my breath.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of it's not even you don't really get days off. You get like an hour off,
Yeah.
for maybe if you're lucky a couple hours and you can fit in some gaming time or something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, at least I'm happy to have the first week done for sure. I think it'll slow down a little bit as we get back into our routines and everything like that. So I'm excited about that for sure. Truthfully, outside of PAX West, I haven't had a ton of game time. Like I'm just starting to get back into finding some pockets of like just personal individual game time where I'm not necessarily in a rush to cover something or make a review or make a video. Yeah, not that I haven't been playing another review game. I'm reviewing the Castlevania Dominus collection that just kind of got shadow dropped at the direct a couple weeks ago. Is it a couple weeks ago? I have no sense of timing whatsoever,
Yeah, I
but
don't even remember. Yeah.
I think it's a little while back, but yeah, just the end of August, beginning September is just crazy. So yeah, I started getting into that, playing a little bit of Dawn of Souls, which I think is the first game out of the three. Enjoying it. It's got that Igavania, Metroidvania thing, going full throttle. And we like those games, and I'm a fan. So gonna get through those when I can, and then gosh, it's right into RPG season again, like with some of the big games we've been looking forward to, and Zelda coming out at the end of the month too, which I'm jacked about.
Yeah, there's so much coming, and I'm still trying to wrap up a few games, and then actually just started up a new one that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But yeah, it's finding the time to get these things done is getting harder and harder with all the game releases.
Yeah, I think that I try to make time for all the big games, and so we can cover them on the podcast and stuff like that. But I feel like there's going to be one or two that are just going to get left behind, and that'll make a little more sense when I get to the games I played at PAX West, because my priorities have definitely shifted after
Yeah.
going to some of these appointments and just testing out things. And I guess it's a nice thing about the show and playing demos in general is that you do get a sense of like, maybe this is the game. This isn't the game I thought it was, and that works both ways, right? In terms of it being better than you expected, or maybe being a little bit worse, or just different from what you expected. So, yeah, we'll get into those shortly. But I do want to hear about your Sword of Mana impressions, because this is a game I've played Final Fantasy Adventure, but I have not played the remake, despite maybe having a cartridge or seeing it around my house from time to time.
Yeah. Well, that's the so I guess it's a bit of a follow up from last week because Paige gave us the Visions of Mana review, and basically I think like we wrapped up recording, and I might have woken up the next morning and thought like, man, I want to start the Mana series. So I actually started Final Fantasy Adventure, like the Game Boy game, and I played probably about an hour of that, and I and I've always been meaning to. Like I'm pretty sure I played it back in the day, but I have no memory of it at this point. It was so long ago. And yeah, so I'm playing it a bit, and then but as I'm playing it, it's feeling, because I had just played Link's Awakening a few months ago on the GBA with my like the original game cartridge. So I already kind of had that Game Boy experience just recently. So I thought, like, I own Sword of Mana, and I know that this is a remake of this game. Like, it's a remake of the original. And I know that for the GBAs, what they were basically doing, like at this point, Mana had kind of become its own thing. So when they did the remake, they wanted to kind of get rid of the Final Fantasy link. I guess they were looking to kind of remove some of the references and kind of just redo it in its own thing. And I love an excuse to play a GBA game at this point, because it's such a blind spot in my history, and the looks of all these games that I've been playing on GBA are kind of like right up my alley. So I'm like,
Yeah.
why am I not playing Sword of Mana? So I popped it in, and it's funny playing it right after too, because you can see, like, even in I'm a couple hours into Sword of Mana now, and I could see, like, it was so easy to play like the first hour, because it was basically like pretty much the same
Yeah,
to a
you've
certain
done this
extent.
before. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, I know where I'm supposed to go. I know what I'm supposed to do. Like, the first boss is the same, and but it looks, it's pretty neat. So basically, the Sword of Mana, like I said, it's the remake of the original, and the story goes is that they're originally, I guess, like the mana. There was this evil dude that took over the mana tree, or something related to that, and he was kind of running the place, and so the world kind of rebelled and finally got rid of him. And we're kind of in the post evil dude world, where they're trying to kind of get things back on track, and kind of, it's almost like, in the 50s, like the post World War II era kind of thing, where
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
we're trying to rebuild things, but we also have to keep in mind that, like, we don't need another bad guy coming in here to mess things up again. And so, unfortunately for for the Sword of Mana world, Dark Lord, who's I guess he's like a prince of um, one of these kingdoms or whatever, is like basically retracing the steps of the evil guy. So he's trying to get the power that this guy that they just disposed of, so he could take over the world. And in Sword of Mana, you get to choose between playing as the hero or the heroine. So in the original game, you're just the hero, and then you meet the heroine, and the two of you go on an adventure together. But in this
Right.
one, they've redone it where you could choose either one, and for the most part, it's you're still playing the same story, but you're playing from a different perspective depending on who you choose. So I had actually started Sword of Mana, I think, last year, and I had chose the heroine. So I had played through her prologue before, and then I know that there's points in the game where they end up getting split up for whatever reason. And so if you're playing as the heroine, you're doing what she was doing during that time. But this
Hmm.
time I chose the hero, so I played his prologue, and which is much closer to the original story, because you have that fight in the gladiator ring with the monster, and then you run out through the monster's entrance, and then you get tossed off the waterfall and you end up in Topple, and then that's what you end up meeting, the girl, but then or the heroine, and so, like, it's playing through that same way before. And so I played as the hero's prologue this time, and then I got to the point where there was like the split, and I played the hero's version. So it was kind of neat that way. I guess it gives a little bit more playability if you want to kind of see what it was from the other character's perspective, if you enjoy the game. Um, as things go, like, it's easier to play the GBA game than it is the Game Boy game, just because the combat's a little more complex, like, not much more, unfortunately, but a little bit more complex in the sense that it's, um I kind of compare it to, like, the Legend of Zelda experience, where it's like Final Fantasy Adventure is kind of like playing Link's Awakening with the way
Yeah.
that the mechanics work, and then this one is kind of similar to Minish Cap in the way that you're attacking. You can use a sword, and they actually have different weapons in this game, where, like, I have a sword and a bow and arrow right now, but then there's also magic. And the combat's pretty simple so far. Like the boss, I've done 2 boss battles, and neither one has been particularly difficult. The second one was against this vampire, and when I multiple save files, thank God, because I went into the vampire fight and got completely wrecked. And then I'm like, okay, clearly I'm not leveled up enough. So there's like a room right before the vampire that's filled, like, that refills with monsters all the time. So I just, like, grinded for probably 15, 20 minutes to build up my level, and then I was able to it was a much easier fight against the vampire.
Mm-hmm.
uh Nothing's particularly standing out per se. Like, I love the graphics, I love the look.
Yeah, it looks
um
awesome. I like the look
yeah,
too.
there's much more comedy in the game than I was expecting, because the game came across as a more serious game. So I don't know if this is like one of those things where the localization team was like, let's throw some comedy in here, because there's like jokes here and there. And even the hero is like, he has this, Dark Lord killed his parents, and the whole backstory is that he's like out for revenge. He needs to find a way, like, because he, at the beginning, Dark Lord, he kind of semi fights Dark Lord, and Dark Lord throws him off the waterfall, so he knows he's not strong enough to take him on. So
Yeah.
he's going on this journey to find a way, or figure out how he's going to do it. And so you would think like he's kind of like in Punisher mode, or like this, anger or whatever. But then, he meets up with the heroine, and then the people he's meeting, like, he's cracking jokes, and he's kind of a bumbling fool to a certain degree with some of the interactions and stuff. So it's kind of funny, like, seeing this, like, comedy in this very serious overtone of story. But uh, I think my biggest complaint so far, though, is that the way it works, like, if I want to switch weapons, so if I'm like using a sword and I want to switch the bow and arrow, you have to go into the menu system to switch the weapon, and I find
Right.
that I'm
Yeah.
switching weapons very often. Like, right now, I'm about 2 hours in, I would say, and so I've kind of gotten past I'd say the first kind of 3 areas. I'm through the prologue. I've went through Topple and met who I need to go, and then I went through. There's like a haunted mansion where you meet the vampire, and you save. I don't even know. The whole point you were going there is that you needed a route unlocked, which the vampire unlocks for you. And then I'm in the next part, which is the Marsh Cave, which is hilarious, because like
Mm.
they clearly didn't get rid of all the Final Fantasy references.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
And so I'm like going through the Marsh Cave now, but I'm like, you'll be in one room, and there'll be opponents that you have to use the sword, and then there'll be opponents that you have to use the bow and arrow. And like, so I'm like constantly like popping into the menu to switch from one weapon to the other, which is kind of grating on me a little
Yeah,
bit.
no,
So
totally. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean that reminds me of, like, and you mentioned, Link's Awakening, and the other handheld Game Boy games, where that's the most cumbersome part of those games, is having to switch. You only have 2 slots, and you have to switch
yeah,
constantly to different items or weapons or whatever. So yeah, that's definitely something I don't miss, and that I guess more contemporary games, have found a way to get around. Right, you have more buttons on the controllers now, whatever,
yeah.
so you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, that's one of those things from that era that I certainly don't miss. Even if I do love the way these games look, yeah, the controls can be a bit frustrating for sure.
Yeah, so it's. I mean, overall, I'm going to continue playing. Like, it's enjoyable enough, and I think as the game goes on, like, you level up, like, you can, and there's some choice to how you do it, like, because you're actually switching between the two characters on the fly too. So the hero is more of, well, at least I'm building him up as more of like a warrior rogue. So every time the level up comes, I'm choosing to put it towards like the attacking and the HP and that sort of thing. And then with the heroine, I'm keeping her as like the magic user, and kind of building her up that way. And I've mostly been playing as a hero because it's just easier to use the sword and shield or the sword and the bow and arrow at this point. So I'm assuming at some point we're gonna get to an area where maybe the focus has to be more on the magic, so I'll have to switch with her. But you just hit the select button and it switches back and forth.
Mm.
Um, but while you're not and then the other character that you're not using is controlled by AI, which is pretty useless to
Yeah,
them.
yeah. It's the same
Like,
with Secret of Mana, right? Like the
yeah.
AI in that game is so bad, so
Oh yeah.
it's
So it's
tough to
like,
rely on them.
yeah, a lot of times the backup character is like dying, like especially in the vampire fight. Like I was using the hero, and then the heroine must died within like seconds, and I'm like, well, that was, I'm on my own, I guess. Like the computer's not gonna give me
Yeah,
any assistance on this one. So there's just, and when she dies, she's just like this little flying ghost that follows you around, which is kind of funny. But I mean, there's items that I used. Uh, I can't remember what it's like angel garb or something that like resurrects them. So I tried doing that, but then like she died again in like 10
yeah,
seconds. So I'm like,
yeah.
oh,
There's no,
forget it. I'm
don't
not.
bother.
Yeah, I'm not wasting my items at this point. I'm just gonna beat the vampire, and I'll hold on to this stuff for later.
Now, I'm trying to think back to when I first or when I've last played Final Fantasy Adventure, and I think it's when the Collection of Mana came out. Do you remember that
Yeah,
released on
yeah,
Switch, and we got Trials of Mana for the first time? I guess just ahead of the remake. But I was going through Final Fantasy Adventure at that time and thinking, yeah, this is fun. It was, I guess, a game I kind of missed out on Game Boy. I remember playing the Legend games, but Adventure was just one that passed me by. I've been kind of looking into, I guess, the consensus or some of the impressions of a Sword of Mana versus Final Fantasy Adventure, and I think a lot of people do prefer the original game. We're like this too with a lot of things too. Like we like their original. We don't always love the changes that are input, aside from maybe graphical ones, and maybe it is it's a slightly, you mentioned the two characters, like that's a neat change too. But I'll be curious when you get through this one, and if you do end up going back to Final Fantasy Adventure, finishing that one, doing the kind of side by side thing, and seeing
yeah,
which one you end up preferring, because I think, like I said, you and I are usually on the older one. We like that a little bit better.
yeah.
We're curmudgeonly like that sometimes about our games. So I'd be curious if that shakes out for you too.
Yeah, and I think I'm just gonna skip the 3D remake, Adventures of Mana, that they did for Vita, Android, and iOS.
Doesn't sound very appealing at all.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard it's not great, so I was like, no, I'm good. GBA and Game Boy is good enough for me.
I mean, that's almost part of the Vita blind spot for us, of just not having a Vita at launch, and following that library very closely. I guess getting to it after the fact, and even around the time when the Vita shop would have been closing. It's at least it's certainly a blind spot for me, and just never played a lot of Vita games. And then when I
Yeah,
end up getting a Vita, I end up just playing all these old PS1 classics,
yeah, that's what I did.
so that was our Vita experience, a good one to be sure. And I did like the Vita developed, or the specific games made for the console for the most part. But yeah, that remake, which was kind of much maligned, definitely one I'm not probably not ever going to try.
Yeah. Well, I know you probably have a long list of games, and you even teased earlier that there's going to be some pretty neat Square Enix impressions that you're going to have. So why don't we jump into the PAX West experience that you
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
enjoy?
Sounds good. So I've been doing PAX West for a number of years now. I think the only year I didn't go was the COVID year. And then, like I said, took a hiatus for like a year because of the pandemic, and then came back. And yeah, going pretty strong, like, the last 8 to 10 years, I think. And constantly Facebook is reminding me of, like, every weekend when I go, it'll remind me, like, oh, your memories from, like, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and so on. So it's nice to be reminded of just how long I've been going. Not obviously not covering it as media for NWR the whole time, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So we went down on the Friday. PAX is in Seattle, so it's about a 2 hour drive. We went down on the Friday very very early in the morning. So we left our place and I was driving with my friend and colleague, who's also named Jordan. We were driving down at about 6 in the morning because we had to pick up our badges to get into the expo, and we wanted to attend the media hour. So there's only one day that has a dedicated hour just for media to go into the expo hall and to check out the games and such. So that media hour takes place from 9 to 10 a.m. on the Friday. So we get there, we get into Seattle around, we stop for coffee or whatever, like 8:30, 8:45. We get our badges, and we're into the expo hall probably just after 9 o'clock, like maybe 9:15 or something like that. And our plan is to make a beeline to Nintendo's booth because we don't have any appointments with Nintendo, and we do want to see the games that the new games that they're showing off. So they had Zelda playable, and they had Mario Party playable. And so we get there, and still a lineup, which isn't super shocking. Like a lot of the media are going to want to check out those games as well. Nintendo's probably the biggest developer publisher at the show. Even though they don't have the biggest booth, they had a very big presence, obviously, with probably a more surprising final year of Switch end of year lineup than I think people were anticipating. So
Hmm.
that's part of it as well. So yeah, we get into the line, probably wait 20, 30 minutes in line, and then we get to check out the demos. So we play Zelda first, and it's pretty much seems like it's just the beginning of the game. It looks like an improvement, even though it's using the same kind of engine graphical style as the Link's Awakening remake from Grezzo. I think there's definitely been an improvement in the fidelity, the performance. It ran very well. It looked really sharp. The water effects in particular were pretty eye catching. But the demo just takes place at the beginning of the game, so you're in like a dungeon, um, and Zelda has to escape. You're starting to learn the powers of this rod that she has. And so the premise, if everyone doesn't know or if you've forgotten, is that she can use this special rod to copy objects in her environment. So whether that's a table or enemies or a plant or something like that, and then you store them kind of in memory, and you can use those objects to solve puzzles. So in the dungeon, you grab like these stools, these small tables, and you stack them such that you can make like a ladder for yourself, and then she has a jump too, so you can jump up kind of one level, I guess, or one floor, and so you jump on the tables and you make a stack, and you go to the next jail cell that has an open door. And then you escape, and then the rest of the castle dungeon is just escaping to try to get outside to safety. And so you're using the rod to kind of evade the soldiers that are patrolling around. There's a little bit of that stealth kind of sequence that happens early on as you kind of learn how you would use the rod to solve puzzles. Yeah, it looks great. I got outside the dungeon, and then there's a little bit of combat where you summon. You throw. I threw a rock at like those slime type enemies, and then I was able to copy one, and you can summon them so they can fight for you, and you even get to direct them as to who they would attack. So there's some. It's not just like let your minions go and they'll do your bidding or do their own thing. They actually will follow your instructions to an extent and fight the enemies you want them to fight. Um, yeah, it was only about a 15-minute demo. It was a timed one, so as soon as the 15-minute timer elapsed, that was the end, and so I didn't get to see too much. But I'd say I went from being maybe more skeptical of the game to a little bit more convinced. I am definitely going to pick it up, and I'm probably more excited now than I was before I played the demo. So it, I guess, confirmed some of the things that I wanted to know about the game, like how does the copying feel and work, and what kind of puzzles are going to be thrown your way. But it was definitely a positive experience playing Zelda for sure.
That's
Um,
good.
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of the people that did play the demo were satisfied by it. So it left a positive impression on folks. We played a little bit of Mario Party. We played a mini game mode where there were 4 players, and we were just assigned like 3 kind of random mini games. And whoever, I guess, got the most stars out of those by winning the games, they were the champion of that round. So we played 2 rounds of 3. The mini games were pretty fun. One that I remember was a 2-on-2 game where you and your partner are trying to cut a steak so that the left side of the steak and the right side of the steak are proportionate or even. And so you're kind of, and they're not just like circles or rectangles, like they're steak shaped. So you
Yeah.
have to kind of gauge where the best place is to make the cut. And so that was kind of fun. Then you kind of waggle a little bit, I think, or move the stick back and forth, actually doing the cutting of the steak. With one game that stood out to me was you're trying to cross a pit of lava, and this was a free for all type game, and you have to choose like almost like Tetris type blocks to make your path from left to right. But if someone else of the four chooses the same Tetris block as you, then you don't, neither of you get it. So you have to be strategic in terms of, which block is best for building your path, but which one is also maybe not the best for everybody, right? Or will this block help the person above you as much as you? Then maybe choose a different one because they're probably going to go for that. So that was a pretty fun mini game to play as well. This is a game that I'm looking forward to playing with my kids for sure. So I think we'll probably download this one. We don't actually have any of the Mario parties downloaded on Switch. I think I'd like to have a digital version moving into Switch 2 next year and seeing what that looks like. And yeah, I find myself with games that I'm going to play with the family not buying so many physical ones because they're still at an age of being very likely to lose the cards. I'm sure we have where he lost a bunch of game cards, and things are never in the case where they're supposed to be.
I feel like it's the Switch games are going to be one of those things where people are going to be looking at couches on the side of the road and seeing if there's like a Switch game in the cracks of like the couches and stuff because it's
Totally, yeah.
They're so small.
Or sucked up into your vacuum or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm always paranoid if I let the Roomba go. And we haven't run it in a while, but if I let the Roomba go, is it gonna pick up a Switch game or two that was hiding under the couch or something like that? So, yeah, that
well, even now,
yeah.
I was opening. I was going through, so I've got like I had to move my Switch collection, and I was like opening cases, and I'm like, well, this isn't this game, and like so the kids have kind of like completely mixed up all the games. So I'm like, oh man, this will take me an hour if I go through and try to like, because basically they just like, oh, I want to play Smash Brothers. So then all of a sudden Double Dragon ends up in the Smash Brothers case, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to play Pokemon, and now the Smash Brothers is in the Pokemon case. Like, and it just continues until it's just like complete chaos.
For sure, it's the same story here. And so what my solution was to take things out of the cases and just put them in like one of those cartridge holders, So it's like, okay, all 20 of your games are here, but then they never put them back in that holder either. So it's kind of defeated the purpose. So the games are usually just scattered around a couple of different boxes, or hopefully not if they get under the floor, or sorry, under the couch or under the TV stand or something like that, we're hooped. But yeah. But yeah, the Nintendo booth was a good one. Happy to have a chance to play those games. I haven't put any other impressions up of those ones. Just got so busy with the Square Enix ones. But yeah, hopefully get a chance to write up some impressions for those too. So that was Friday. Was our kind of our focus was getting up early, getting to the show, trying out the Nintendo booth before it got nuts, and sure enough, like every time you walked back to the Nintendo booth during the rest of the PAX weekend, the lineup was capped and they weren't letting new people in, or it was an hour, 2 hours plus just to get into try those games. So it seems like getting up early on the Friday to avoid those future headaches was a good call, and so we might do that in the future moving forward. So that was Friday, and then after that, I don't think we had any major appointments. I moved one thing from Saturday that had a conflict with another appointment to Friday. So that was an RPG that we played called Ulterium Shift. Ulterium Shift has been in early access / has had a Steam demo for about a year. This is a pixel art kind of game. It reminds me a lot of the Quintet games in particular. It uses the Quintet font, I'm pretty sure, which is, from games like Robotrek, Illusion of Gaia. And it's the gameplay or the story reminds me a little bit of something like a little bit of Chrono Trigger. There's a little bit of almost a little bit of Dragon Age Origins, just in terms of the prologue and how the game's set up as well. So the Ulterium Shift demo, and I got to actually play it on Switch, which was cool. They kind of, I guess, not rushed, but pushed to make sure there was a Switch demo at the booth as well. So it was cool to try it on handheld mode. But anyways, so Ulterium Shift is an RPG where you have 3 protagonists, and you get to choose one of them from the outset. You have a mage whose name is Sage. You have kind of a warrior, kind of fighter type. Gosh, I can't remember her name. Pyra, I think it is. And then you have kind of a jack of all trades, kind of a archer named Atlas, I think. Hopefully I'm getting those names right. And the prologue changes based on which one you choose, which was cool. They all kind of experience slightly different events leading up to, I guess, the opening up of the world. So I started with Sage. Their prologue was pretty interesting. It's a character who is always wanting to fall asleep or not work super hard. They're not super dedicated as a student. But you meet with your instructor and they put you through like a little bit of a kind of training thing. But with Sages, you can kind of just be overconfident and not even do the combat. I think his version of the prologue was funny because I could kind of just skip that training session, even though with the other two characters you do have to engage in combat with your master, your trainer. So it was funny to see him skip that, and then there's a lot of different dialogue that happens, slightly different sequences, meeting up with characters, and they'll play out a little bit differently in this kind of sleepy town that you start in. Your first quest after your training session is kind of done is also different. Whether it's defeating enemies in the nearby forest, or rescuing a cat, or chaperoning someone to a particular a cemetery outside of town as well. Everyone's objective was a little bit different. So, speaking to the devs, it sounds like the main kind of story beats are the same for the three characters, but you will have different kind of side events, and things will, I guess there'll be like a little bit of a divergence at different points along the story where whoever you chose as your protagonist will have slightly different experience. So I thought that was pretty cool. The game it looks a little bit, it's pixel art for sure, and it reminds me of something like Illusion of Gaia in particular, even though it has turn-based combat as opposed to the action combat of that game. But yeah, it was nice to try out Alterium Shift. I think they're aiming to come out of early access next year, and the plan is to come to consoles as well. So probably a good one to keep on your radar. If for no other reason than it does the multiple protagonist thing in a clever way. I mentioned Dragon Age Origins because that was something I mentioned to the fellow from the dev team that I'd met, and that game is where you choose your class and your prologue is different. Your experience is slightly different based on who your starting class is, or your starting race, I should say, whether it's dwarf or elf or human. Or if you choose to be a mage and you start in the I can't remember the tower that you're in, the mage tower, but you feel almost like a prisoner there. And
Yeah.
I loved that element of Dragon Age Origins where you the first hour or two is completely different from anyone else, every class and race there. So that was cool. So I was getting a little bit of vibes from Alterium Shift in that way. But I think it feels a little bit early. I think there's still work to go into that game, just in terms of presentation and combat and things like that. I can't remember too much about the combat. I didn't do a lot of it, but exploring around and kind of it's one of those games where you and I get this from like Trails games sometimes, where everything you click on has like a description, or maybe something funny to say, like even if you're just clicking on a dresser or a bed or a pot or something like that, it'll have something funny to say. So there's clearly a lot of writing that's gone into the game as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it on Steam now, and yeah, it has that very like SNES look, or even
Yeah.
it's funny that you mentioned Legend of Heroes, because it almost has that early PS Vita or PSP look to it as well. Like,
Yeah, I got that sense. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it has like they're even like you said, it's in early access, but all the screenshots are kind of like hitting all the regular RPG vibes, where it's like they got like a fishing game, and yeah, I could see like the turn-based combat has like HP and whatever AE I guess would be kind of like a ability or magic or whatever, and then
Yeah,
there's
as
the
your magic
burst
points.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's yeah, it looks pretty neat.
Hmm. Yeah, I like I said, I wasn't overwhelmed by the combat visuals or anything like that, but I like the art style. It is reminiscent of a lot of turn-based RPGs that we're pretty fond of here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on this one. And that was it was a nice way to kind of wrap up the appointments that I had on Friday. And so we actually had a lot of Friday to just kind of roam around and check out the different booths and pretty much take it easy. And that was kind of the name of the game with this PAX experience. Rather than like just constantly booking appointments and filling up your day with that, we tried to kind of spread it out over 3 days, where it was really, maybe a third of the day, or maybe half was appointments, and the rest was kind of just kind of chilling, walking around, checking out the different merch booths. We spent a lot of time looking at there's always a couple of vendors from different outfits selling used games or kind of retro games. So it's cool to kind of see what see what they've brought to the show, and some of the complete in box stuff that they have, just immaculate. Really, really cool to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty much Friday, and then we left early, and we met up with another friend of ours whose place we were staying at, and we had a nice dinner and stuff like that. So that was good. Saturday was probably the busiest day in terms of appointments. I'm trying to think where we started off with. Um, maybe I'll just focus on what happened in the afternoon, because I don't think I played any big RPGs
I
on
was gonna say
Saturday.
nothing too memorable, obviously.
No, no, not in the morning. They weren't. They were smaller games for sure, and it wasn't as much RPG focused. I moved kind of most of my RPGs to Sunday morning, actually. So I had NIS America and Xseed on Sunday morning, and so I did those kind of back to back, just because we wanted to make an early exit on Sunday as well. Um, while I'm here, I'll do that one. Then I'll jump back to Saturday. Sorry for the chronology confusion. But while we're here, Sunday. So my first appointment on Sunday was with NIS America, and we got a chance to play Phantom Brave. I didn't play it. My colleague Jordan played it. It looked, it's very Disgaea-ish, but it's got some cool things in terms of the battlefield, where as opposed to being grid based, it's a little bit more free flowing, almost like Sparks of Hope was for the Mario plus Rabbids game. You kind of have an area with a perimeter around it, and you can walk wherever you want within that perimeter. So that was kind of neat, or within that area. The Again, the it looks a lot like Disgaea, and there's the kind of that slapstick kind of comedy to it, I think. But the combat seemed fun. I'd be interested in checking that out more. I don't know if Phantom Brave apparently is a series, and it is coming to Switch. I just don't know a lot about that series. I don't have any history with it, nor do I have a lot of history with the Disgaea games either. So it's kind of a blind spot for me. But the demoed well, and it was cool to see all the different characters. You basically have this summoning character that can turn objects into characters or party members. And so you might click on like a bush or a tree, and that'll have particular elemental affinities, maybe like they're weak to fire or strong against water or something like that. And then it'll be a fighter or an archer or a mage or something from your I guess your host of characters that you can summon, but they get certain properties based on where you summon them or what object you use to summon them. So that was kind of neat. um, but it was just a bunch of short demos at NIS America. I thought we'd have more time. I don't know what happened with the booking, but we tried to cram in as much as we could into about a 40-minute session. Um, After Phantom Brave, I went hands on with East Nordics, East 10. Yeah, and so that was fun. It's definitely took some getting used to the controls, because you only have the two characters. And I've played these games, or I'm talking about them out of order. I also played Trails Through Daybreak 2. And so going back and forth between those two games, where for one of them the main attacking button is Y, and for the other one the switching characters button is Y, I got kind of messed up. So I was playing Nordics after Trails Through Daybreak, and I kept switching between the two characters, and it's like I keep hearing like the Adol, and then I think it's Karja, I think is the other character in Nordics. And I kept switching between them, but the combat felt pretty good. It was fun to see the different kind of mechanics you get with pairing them up, and you link them, and they do a lot of damage together. But you basically have Adol kind of doing the light basic attacks with his sword; they're a little bit quicker. And then Karja has like an axe, and her attacks are a little bit slower and stronger. And so the more heavily armored enemies, you want to be using Karja for that. I didn't get to see any of the ship combat or anything. It was just kind of the small dungeon that we were going through. We did get to the mini boss, which was fun. Seems like a good challenge. Like, you do have to be kind of paying attention to when enemies are using attacks. Adel and Karja have a charge up attack. One is fire, one is ice, and so the boss presented opportunities where you had to use the Adel's fire attack to eliminate like some bramble or branches that had been building up, and were kind of impeding our ability to move around the arena. or you had to use Karja's ice to create like a pillar or a pedestal to kind of stand on or walk around. So that was kind of neat how the battlefield transforms a bit, and you have to kind of clean it up or declutter it before you can get back to fighting. So I liked that part of it. But again, just a really really short demo there. I skipped over Trails Through Daybreak because again we didn't get a lot of time with that one. It was again kind of another dungeon sequence with Van and Elaine, just those two. The neat change that's happening with that game is for those who liked the out of the turn-based combat, the action kind of style, which I did a lot of actually in playing that game. They've added the ability to use arts outside of the turn-based combat as well. So you can hold, I think you hold down one of the buttons, and Van or Elaine will use like an art in the action combat style. So that was a neat addition that I thought people might be taking advantage of, or maybe one reason why you didn't want to do the action combat is very button mashy, and so to add like the art element to it, and you kind of switch to the different characters, I guess to use different arts that are equipped on like this quick kind of menu. That was a nice change too. I these games were all running on. Sorry, I shouldn't say they all. Trails and Nordics were both running on PS5. Ran very well, looked great. No concerns performance wise there. East End is coming up. Is it an October one for us, David?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's October. It's coming
Yeah.
soon. Yeah.
And I think it's not too long into 2025 where we'll have Trails Through Daybreak too. So definitely looking forward to both of those games. I wish I had a little bit more time with them, or that I got a chance to check out the games
Oh,
on Switch as
October
well. But
25th.
oh God,
Yeah.
that made
So
me
like,
scared. It's right after Romancing Saga. I can't believe that.
yeah, it's like it's only like a month and a couple weeks away.
Yeah, October's going to be a rough one. But yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to that. Playing the demo was fun. I attended like a preview event, like a digital one, where I got to see a little bit of the ship combat and see I think it was the same demo actually that I ran through here. But yeah, I'm excited about these games for sure. We'll see what else Trails Through Daybreak 2 does as a sequel. I mean, it's so close to the launch of the original. I don't know what the time lag is between the original, the Japanese releases of those games, but I can't imagine it was very long. Um, so I mean,
It's been out in Japan for a while now.
but between what was the time between the release of the first one and the release of the second game?
Oh, they were pretty close together.
Pretty
Like
close together, right?
there wasn't a huge gap between them. I remember
Some
like hearing about the second one. I'm like, didn't the last one just come out?
Yeah,
Like,
right. Yeah, I knew I
yeah.
knew they were close together, and it's good that we're kind of getting them that way as well. Because I feel like the main draw of the sequel is going to be more story based and more focused on certain characters. Like I was getting that sense of even with the intro starting with Van and Lane, you get a sense that there's going to be a lot more to their relationship and what's happening with those two. So I'm excited to see that more because I thought there was only kind of teased out a little bit, and those scenes were quite funny between them in the first game. So getting more of them and maybe more of the cast that we've already met will be fun. It is a great group of characters, so yeah, that'll be fun to see more of that sequel next year. At Xseed, the we played there were 4 demos that we played. The one I'll focus on is E's Origin, or no, E's Memoir, Oath and Felghana. It plays very similar to E's Origin, which is why I make that mistake in talking about them. It's all action. It seems like a really kind of solid remake, played super well. I was actually demoing that on Switch, which seems to be their lead platform there. Um, the We were just kind of in a mountainous area, and you had an opportunity to take Adol kind of in very kind of vertical segments too. It wasn't just horizontal. There were a lot of places where I'm kind of scaling the mountain up or down, and so you got to see that sense that verticality at play as well. The character sprites look great. In the cutscenes or the dialogue that happens, I love the kind of anime style that they're using there, which I think we've seen before, but it was really really sharp looking. Um, the demo took me through. I don't know what part of the game we're at. It did feel very early on, but I went and fought one particular boss. and then I got a fire ability. So you have your basic kind of sword attack, and then this fire ability that uses your magic points, and so you can't spam it forever. But I took the fire ability and went through a few more mountain pass sections, and then got to which is probably the final boss of the area where I had to use the fire ability. She's too far away to reach this kind of giant, almost mermaid looking creature, and she was really really tough. So I did a few retries and I got her down to probably about a quarter of health before the demo was wrapping up. So I ended up calling it there. But definitely going to be a challenging game for sure. I think I was playing on the normal setting. But if you liked Ys Origin, the remake that came out a couple of years ago, this is one to put on your radar as well. Ys Memoir, The Oath and Felgana.
It's funny that this game is a remaster of a remake.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Originally, it was a 16-bit. It was Eve's 3.
That's right. Yeah.
Originally, and then they made it for the PSP, and now
PSP.
this
Yeah.
is a remaster of the PSP game.
Yeah, and it has that like PSP, PS Vita look to it for sure. A
Yeah,
lot of like jagged edges, and we've seen games like that before. Like I said, even Ys Origin kind of maintains that look as well. So yeah, it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna wow you with the visuals, but the performance is rock solid. For a game with kind of twitchy action combat like this, where you're spamming a lot and there's no dodge button, you're kind of just jumping around the enemies. So the combat isn't super involved. Like it is a lot of more just timing, like getting out of the
yeah.
way of enemy attacks, jumping out of the way, running out of the way, and then going in and smashing the attack button for a little while and then dodging back out. It did feel really good, and there were no hiccups, no slowdown or that I really noticed. So that was pretty awesome to see. I don't think it has a release date. It may have a window of like winter or something or fall, but then I overheard one of the booth guys saying, "Oh, 2025." So that could be one that, if it hasn't been dated, it might be coming early next year instead. But it was a fun demo for sure, and it renewed my interest in that game definitely. And I liked Ys Origin too, and it seems like it's just going to be more of that. So.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know if this is, I see March 31, 2025, but I don't know if
okay.
that might not be official though.
Probably a placeholder, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, likely early next year. So stay tuned for that one, especially if you like the earlier Ys games and just their focus on combat. I did play one other game at the Xseed booth, but I'll save that for maybe another time when we hear more about it. And I didn't play for very long, so I do want to make sure we get to the Square Enix games here. So Saturday afternoon, I had a separate appointment with Square Enix where it was offsite. They weren't even at PAX proper at the convention hall, or the second convention hall building that just opened up last year. They were actually at the Westin Hotel, so about a 10-minute walk from the expo hall, not too far. And so I had an appointment for 4 o'clock, and it was the final appointment of the day. It was going to run till about 6 o'clock. I knew I'd be seeing 3 games, and it wasn't clear right away when I first made the appointment what those games would be. They also had the new Life is Strange game. I think it's a sequel that they were demoing kind of as a separate, longer appointment. And unfortunately, I didn't get to check that out. I'd hoped to, but it just didn't work out with timing. But I did get to check out 3 shorter demos that were kind of, I guess, not curated, but they had like little presentations before them as well. So it was all set up very well. The room was really nice. You could play on PS5 or Switch, so that was really great for us to be able to check out Switch demos. Obviously, these games are going to look and run better on the PS5 demo. But yeah, it's still a very good experience overall. So we're in kind of like a little lounge area in one of the hotel rooms. We were set up with 3 games. It was Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven, and Fantasian Neo Dimension. There was kind of an order to the games, or a prescribed order. We had presentations on each game that were about 5 to 10 minutes long each. That kind of gave you an intro spiel, like what is the game about, how does it play, where does the demo situate you. And so the order was Romancing Saga 2, Fantasian, and then Dragon Quest III HD 2D. Romancing Saga 2 I'll start there just because that was the first demo I played, and man, was I impressed by that game. Uh, I went into the session knowing what games we were going to play, but not, um, you know, probably thinking Dragon Quest 3 would be okay. This is the game that I'm going to be most excited about because that's HD 2D. We love those games. That's already a really good game, anyways. We'd already seen a lot of that game, whereas Romancing Saga 2 and Neo Fantasian we hadn't, or Fantasian Neo Dimension, we hadn't seen a lot of those. They were more recent announcements. But we've been waiting years for Dragon Quest 3. Romancing Saga 2 ended up being the best game, or my favorite game I played at PAX West. Um, the demo starts you off in the second generation. And the premise of these games is that it has a lineage mechanic where you're the ruler of this kingdom, and when you die in battle, you pass on your memories and your abilities to your kin. And so, and then the next person grows up, and then they're the new ruler of the land, and they've inherited these abilities, and you kind of, I guess, you start the process over again to an extent. Of kind of building up that character, but they've got all this heritage that is informing their abilities, their progression. So you start in the second generation as a character named Gerard. We start off in his castle, and we know there's an orc invasion that's coming to the castle and the surrounding town. So you already have like a party, like a retinue of characters that are on your side, but there's one fellow who's like kind of skeptical. He's like, you're not the old king. Like, I liked him, but I don't know if you're any good. And so you instantly have like this side objective of trying to convince this guy to join your party, who's he's very headstrong and not super enthused by you taking over. And you're too young, you're inexperienced. What do you know about combat? That kind of thing. Yeah. So you go into the town, and it's turn-based combat, but there is that opportunity to hit enemies in the field and get like a bonus or like a surprise attack kind of thing, where you'll get your turns first or whatever. So you're fighting goblins. It's as opposed to some of the original Romancing Saga 2 remake, which did come to Switch and other platforms, which I think we've talked about, or we've maybe both dabbled in that game a little bit, which was all 2D. These are originally Super Nintendo games, I believe, or Super Famicom games. Yep. And then so this is a full 3D remake, top down. It's actually from the Trials of Mana remake team, which was a really cool detail to learn because I loved that game. It had its flaws, but I can see growth obviously coming here with a lot more to do in this game. So I'm going through the town, taking out the orcs. I fight like this orc captain mini boss. The combat was pretty challenging. You had a choice of 3 difficulties, kind of casual, normal, or hard. The hard or classic difficulty is supposed to replicate the original Super Famicom experience. So for those who like maybe they've played the old games, or they want that like really hard as nails experience, that is built in there. I played on normal, still found it to be a good challenge. Still like had to make good decisions against the bosses and stuff like that. One thing that really stood out about the combat is the way that you learn abilities is through this kind of random glimmer or glimmering mechanic. That a light bulb will pop off on the top of a character's head, and they'll use a new ability, and then that'll be in their repertoire from that point on.
That's a Saga game for you.
Exactly, yeah. So I think Saga Scarlet Grace, it had this mechanic, right, David, if I'm not mistaken. And then Emerald Beyond, which was the more recent Saga game, didn't play that one, but I think it plays very similar to that way. In this game, and I don't know if Scarlet Grace had this, but beside your attacks, when you're choosing which attack you want to use, you can actually see a light bulb icon. And the light bulb icon tells you have a better chance of glimmering a new ability if you use that particular attack.
So no, definitely. I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah. So I think that's new for this game, and I love that because now it's taken a little bit of that random element and given you a way of kind of progressing a little bit more transparently, right? Like you can see if you keep using those abilities that have the light bulb, you're going to gain new abilities. Now, I gained a ton of new attacks from my party, just choosing those light bulb abilities. The thing is, the light bulb icon might not show up beside an attack where an enemy is weak to it, right? So you have to there's that give and take of like, do I want to be learning new abilities, maybe for a new character, or do I want to be hitting enemies' weak points and trying to conserve HP or whatever? One thing which I love is that after a battle, your HP meter is refilled, so you don't need to worry about conserving HP. I think your magic points do not refill, so you can't just be spamming abilities. You have to maybe be a little more conservative there until you get to there's like a healing pad or healing crystal, generally before the bosses, then that'll restore all your magic points there. So I like that. I might be misremembering just having played the 3 games in succession. Maybe it's Fantasian where your HP refills after each fight.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that is the case. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's the one, and maybe in Romancing Saga, it's not the case where your HP refills. It could be both. Might just be Fantasian. Apologies, they're all kind of running together at this point. But yeah, combat was fun. Good challenge. After the orc invasion is repelled, I was able to win that character over to my side, who was kind of being a little bit begrudging of me as the new ruler. And then you had a choice of a couple of different events. You could go to the orc hideout and take them out for good, which I did, and that was a fun little dungeon to go through. And then the demo ended, or at least I ended my time with it by going to this mansion and ended up finding one of the 7. So the subtitle "Revenge of the Seven." These 7 warriors or old heroes that are the evil now and trying to take over the world. So I ended up fighting one of them. And the highlight of the demo, which really really sold me on this game, is there's a moment when you're fighting this boss where they're about to use like their death stroke, right? Their death blow against you, like the surefire, never fails. Like, okay, like this hero is obviously doing some damage to me. I'm gonna take out the big guns and just end them, and end the combat right here. So they take out this soul stealing kind of ability, and my character dodges it, just evades it 100%, no damage, anything like that. And the boss is like, "What? Like, what's going on?" Like they're shocked by this revelation. Like, and it's hilarious. They try to do it a couple times, and you dodge both times, and then your character has this dialogue where they're like, "Yeah, I knew you were going to use this. I learned it from my father. It's not going to work on me this time." And then the boss goes into like this rage and ends up his stats kind of go up, and the giant sword that it's wielding becomes like a target in the battle. And so I was down to like my last 1 or 2 party members, ended up taking him out. It felt really great, but it was just such a cool moment in this fight where your character brings up their past, their history, this lineage mechanic, and so it's there, but it's also part of the story where you see in combat the what you've learned or what you know about the bosses from your forebears is actually coming into play. So I loved that about this. I liked how the progression systems are a lot more transparent. The way you gain stats, like your weapons level up, and so you get points at the end of a battle towards your weapon level. And I guess depending on which weapons you use in combat, those will become stronger. Your HP and your MP slash, I think it's called battle points. Those also have meters that go up with the experience that you gain. So it's in it's I think it's trying to take the Saga series and make it more modern. And I think the more recent remakes didn't do a great job of that. Like again, we both played Scarlet Grace. David, I think you played a lot more than I did. And they're just elements of that game that kind of bounced off for me. And then Emerald Beyond, I think the reviews were pretty middling, and it used that same kind of art style.
Yeah, I
And
bounced off
Scarlet
that
Grace,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that this one, looking more like the Trials of Mana remake, I think that's a great call. I have a lot more confidence in the game knowing it's that team with a little bit more experience under their belts now, having done that previous remake. Um, but yeah, Romancing Saga 2 was a ton of fun. I'm really excited about it. It's probably the game I'm looking forward to the most, and it's definitely one where I will probably put anything else aside and play this one. And I certainly did not go into the appointment with Square Enix thinking that. I was quite shocked actually that the first game I played with them was the one I ended up liking the most. And I almost you were kind of allotted about 30 minutes per demo. And so one of the Square Enix reps or PR reps would come over and say, "Okay, it's been about 30 minutes. You should probably switch to the next game." And I didn't, I really didn't want to switch. I wanted to keep playing, but and there was one more dungeon I could have done, which was supposed to be like a challenging one, but I didn't have time to do that. And I almost based on my impressions of the next game, I wish I had done it. I wish I'd spent more time with that one, but that's okay. Jacked about it. I've got a video preview on NWR's YouTube channel, so check that out if you want to.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think we were sent Switch footage of the game, but in handheld it looked fine. Like you know how these kind of 3D RPGs look. It's a little bit kind of soft and a little bit washed out, but played perfectly fine. The performance was rock solid. Actually, I didn't really notice any slowdown or anything like that or any pop in. So that was a welcome sight to for a game I probably will play a fair bit in handheld. For it to run well was welcome, even though it's not. It'll look sharper on your TV for sure. Um, the second, I don't know if I've convinced you to play this game, David, but I hope you'll give it a really good look because I think it's going to be a really great one.
I'm happy to see that it's not a full price game either. So that's
Yeah,
oh, maybe
exactly.
it is. Never mind. I was like, I must have been looking at the American price because it is $70.
Is it okay? Because I saw 49 somewhere, but maybe that was on the UK website. And I know that when
Well,
it's
that's what I just saw too. But I'm on the Steam page and it says 67. So
okay, yeah. Well, if it's full price, it's worth it, and I think there's going to be a lot of content there. I don't know what would constitute the replay value of the game necessarily, but
yeah,
it looked like there were a lot of party members you could recruit and use in battle. So I'm sure it'll be a good one.
yeah.
The next game I played, and I won't talk about this too much because I didn't love it. And maybe this will be a surprise to some folks, but Fantasia Neo Dimension was definitely something I had higher expectations for, and I would say my expectations are lower now. The
First time you
control.
played it too, right?
First time, yeah. I hadn't
Yeah.
played this game. I'm an Android boy. I don't have Apple devices other than like my kid's iPad, and I don't really. It's not a game I would want to play mobile, anyways. But yeah, the mobile trappings of the game coming over to the console port still very obvious. I think, just in terms of the look and feel of the game, it does seem like it's more of a port than kind of a remaster or anything like that. The control, just walking around, really wonky. It did not feel good at all. As if your character is really fighting the camera, and pushing a button on the directional pad of the stick just wouldn't take you where you want it to go. I don't think you move. I think it's a static camera. I don't think you move the camera, and so
Yeah.
you're just moving the character around these diorama, really cool like diorama environments, but didn't feel good. Like I'm going across these bridges and these hills, and I'm having to like move the stick left and right and up and down and just try to, kind of waggle my way forward until I found like a direction that would work. I was surprised by just the feel of the movement and the environments not being very good. So that was my first kind of impression or takeaway was the movement not being good.
That
Um,
was my biggest fear of this game is because like
yeah,
even so I played it on an iPad and it felt completely designed to be played on an iPad. Like
right.
everything, the movement because the way the movement worked is that you just push the spot where you want the character to go. So if you got like the big diorama on this huge screen and you just click and you're like I want you to walk here and then the character would walk there. And then there's this weird mechanic in the combat where you have to like arc your magic and stuff
Yeah,
to hit
yeah.
multiple and I had actually started playing Fantasian with a controller and then and the arcing, it was just like this is kind of irritating, so I tried on the iPad and again like the way you put your finger down and you kind of hold your finger and then you kind of move it up and down and then you're manipulating the arc and it's way easier on iPad like on a touchscreen than it is with a controller.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is something I noticed as well. That one character she can kind of curve her arc, right? Yeah, it's an arc. You curve her ability and hits multiple enemies, right? I found that just it works with the sticks. It just didn't feel natural. Didn't feel quite the same, or maybe as it's
Yeah,
supposed
it
to.
feels like a workaround.
Yeah, it does feel like a workaround. The other abilities, like one just goes in a straight line. That's pretty straightforward, obviously. And then one is like an area of effect. That was easy to do as well because you're just moving around the radius. But yeah, the arcing one was a little bit weird. I found myself not just trying to go for like the perfect hit of like hit the most enemies. Of just like okay, um, I'll just get a few of them, and we'll just get through the combat. But it was fine. I like the way the menuing works in the game, where you just kind of push to this. You actually just push the stick to the side to see more abilities. It felt pretty snappy. Um, The dimension system's really cool. That was the highlight of the demo for sure. So for those who haven't played the game, the dimension system is a way of reducing the number of random encounters you have. A random encounter will turn into a little sprite that kind of goes into like a backpack or another dimension, I guess, and you store them in this dimension up to like 30 encounters or 30 enemies or something. And once it maxes, you go into the dimension where you have to fight all of them at once. And it's not truly all of them at once. It might be like
I think it's like
seven, eight,
10 or something
10,
like that.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like 10. And then as you beat them, more will come.
Yeah.
Um, and there's ways to get like bonuses. If your projectile attacks hit multiple enemies, then you get like a bonus. You can get a bonus turn or bonus attack buff. So that was kind of neat.
That's
It
where
was
the
just
arcing thing is the most important because
yeah, that's for
yeah,
sure.
like it's the difference between hitting like 2 or 8,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is really satisfying to use your arc or your radius to hit multiple enemies and take out 4 or 5 at a time is pretty cool. It's there where you probably want to make use of your spells a little bit more, just to take out the enemies quickly, so you're not overwhelmed or anything like that. But yeah, I like the dimension. It was cool to go like this new space, and the perspective kind of zooms out a bit, so you're seeing a little bit more of this kind of space like battlefield and seeing all the different enemies. Yeah, I like that element, but I didn't like the controls. I had an unfortunate kind of encounter outside the dimension, a random encounter with this. I think it's like a gimmick kind of encounter where it's this giant pot, and the pot's asking me to give it items, as if I'm feeding it or something, and then the pot's gonna give me something good if I follow his
Oh,
commands, right?
yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about, David? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I gave him the couple of items he was asking for, and then he's like, "Oh, just keep hitting me and just wail on me."
Yeah.
And I'm hitting him, taking all these turns, and he's like, "Oh, you gotta hurry! Like you don't have much time left." And so I ran out of time, I guess. And so he starts smacking me with this giant hand, and he beats me in like 2 turns. And then the game, and I wasn't sure like where my autosave was. I'm like, oh, I don't want to fight. I don't want to go through all this again. So I ended up just like restarting the demo, and I lost like my 10 minutes or 15 minutes of progress. And so it was kind of a frustrating encounter for what I think was a pretty early point in the game. Um, and so
Yeah,
yeah,
I think they come along. It's one of those things where you're supposed to throw certain items in. I think it might even weaken them or something. Like if
okay,
you
okay.
like, and then yeah, there's like a countdown, and if you don't defeat him in time, then you get just wrecked. But if you do
Yeah.
defeat him, then you get like a bonus. It's kind of like a risk reward
Yeah, I
mechanic.
figured it was something like that. I just for like a demo at a convention, it was unfortunate to run into him, because like I'm learning the game. I don't know what this is. I'm only going to encounter him the one time probably, and yeah, so it just didn't work out very well. And so I ended up cutting my time with Fantasian a little bit short. Probably only paid about 20-25 minutes, and I was eager to get a
Bring
full.
on Dragon Quest.
Yeah, exactly. I was ready to move on to a game that I knew I was going to like anyways. Like there was almost no chance of me not liking Dragon Quest. So, cut that one short. Got to Dragon Quest. Played about 30 to 35 minutes of Dragon Quest. Um, Looks great. Obviously, the massive overhaul in the visuals is like a huge selling point of this remake. Um, it looks different from the other HD 2D games. I think it doesn't look like Triangle Strategy or Octopath. It's a little bit more stylized, a little more. I don't know how to quantify it. Like it's not as pixely, right? The pixels don't stand out as much in as they do in those games, and I find it's not as bright. It's a little bit. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I was in some darker spaces, but yeah, the game. I like the visuals. I don't have a problem with it, but just it's not your typical HD 2D. I think that they're maybe experimenting with a slightly different style within that graphical realm. So
Yeah, it
uh,
almost looks more artwork than pixel art.
yes, yeah. It doesn't, yeah,
Yeah.
not so pixel art, even though it is based on that, but they've done something a little different here. So it's funny to have HD 2D in the name, but kind of doing something a little bit different with that art style. But I dig it. I like it. I think it works well. Um, we started off in the town of Romilly, I think, which is There's a gladiator kind of arena there, a monster arena, which is the new mechanic I think they've added for this game, which is I think it's been in other Dragon Quest games, so it's not like we haven't seen that before. Where you have a team of monsters that you've recruited, and they can fight for you in the arena. You didn't get to control them, which was odd. You get to just kind of give them like loose command frameworks, as we've seen in Dragon Quest games before. But that was fine. I ended up going through the monster arena, won that, you get some rewards from that. So a fun little mini game that again I think it's been in previous titles as well. Nice to see it here. Um, there's a new class called the Monster Wrangler. I was fortunate to have that class on in my party, and his abilities were all kind of they're not like it's not like a summoning class or like a Pokemon trainer or something like that. It was more like his abilities are monster based. So like you would summon like a dog or a wolf to come and like do swipes at an enemy. So that was kind of a cool one. Or you can summon like a some type of creature to do like howling move to reduce the enemy's attack. So they're like monster based without being like a summoning type class. So I'm eager to see more of what those abilities are going to look like. Other than that, I had the hero character who seemed to just kind of be like a warrior type. I don't really remember. I had a mage and another fighter, I think, or I might have even had a healer and then an offensive mage. But yeah, after Romilly, I wandered around the town, the town a little bit. Looked gorgeous. The towns just they're so impressive visually. The fountains, the forests, just the people roaming about. I loved exploring the two towns that I went to. Outside the town, kind of big open areas. Where you have again a bit of a zoomed out perspective there, but not to a major extent. You do get to see a lot of the detail in the landscape. Um, Got into a few random encounters. The perspective in the random encounters is funny because it starts off where you see your party before the combat kind of starts, and then when you get into actually giving the commands, it's the normal Dragon Quest turn-based style where you just see the enemies and then you see your menu boxes. So I know some people are maybe looking for maybe more of a hybrid or something closer to what Dragon Quest 11 could have, where you actually see the characters, but it doesn't look like that's the case with this remake. Um, I'm fine with it. I like the simple Dragon Quest look. The abilities definitely got an upgrade in terms of the visuals. So it's neat to see whoosh and frizzle and things like that, and bang in a lot more stylized, graphically impressive format. After Romilly and I'm wandering around the countryside, Zoom seems to be built into the menu, which is cool. So you can fast travel basically from everywhere or anywhere. And so I went to the Skyfell Tower, which was the main dungeon of the demo. Uh, Random encounters there as well. There's a bunch of characters that I met in the dungeon that I was talking to. And you get to the top and you fight Robin Hood, who's that hooded kind of character that you see in Dragon Quest games. Um, uh, Combat was a surprise. I think I can't remember what difficulty it was on. Probably normal. I always try to choose normal for previews and reviews. Um, good challenge to the combat though. I won that one by the skin of my teeth as well. So that was fun to see. And then after I beat the boss, there was probably another story thing to do, but I ended up just kind of exploring some of the towns. So I zoomed to another village that was kind of set not in a forest, but in like a wooded area. So there were trees and grass and water around this village, and it all just looked really nice. Like I think that's going to be one of the highlights of the visuals here is just going through the different towns and the natural environments and kind of seeing what they look like. The Skyfell Tower looked really great too. There's not a lot in terms of like how some of the HD 2D games like we notice like the fire effects, like, oh, look at that fireplace. Like, David, I know you love your fireplaces. um, and so that really grabs you. For me, that wasn't jumping off the page, but the water effects in some of the areas were like in Romilly there's this big fountain in the middle of the town, and it looked so cool. And so that was something that really grabbed me. But yeah, combat feels great. Visual overhaul is seeming to be on point. Switch handheld performance very good. Didn't notice anything slow down or pop in. And I thought there would be in that village with all the trees, but no, it was great. So I think it's going to be one of those ones where grabbing it on Switch, not a major sacrifice for performance. Again, these are all going to look great on a TV for sure, or on PS5 or something like that. But a game that's a very lengthy and turn-based RPGs like this, I think, play pretty well on Switch in general. Not again, if the performance is solid, I think this will be a good one to go handheld if you're so inclined. So, of the three games, Dragon Quest was kind of the middle one for me, just because I was so impressed by Romancing Saga. But Dragon Quest 3, it's going to be great. I certainly didn't leave the demo having any doubts or anything. It's going to be as advertised, I think. So I was eager to see my high expectations kind of met and confirmed by that final demo that I played there.
That's neat. Yeah, I don't think I was gonna pick up Fantasian anyway, just because I've played it on iPad, and I would probably just prefer to play it there since that's kind of where it's meant to be, I guess, or developed for. Plus, like Apple Arcade is cheap, so it's like if I
Yeah,
really wanted to play, like I think it's like $10 or something. So I'd probably do that. But it's neat to hear about Romance and Saga 2 because, yeah, I wouldn't say it was necessarily on my radar because I own the SNES like version on Steam
right.
and just
Yeah,
haven't gotten around to playing it. It's like, well, it's like I already own it. Like, do I need another version of it? But it sounds like it's worth the upgrade. Based on, and it's even I was just watching like some uh trailer of it while you're talking there too, and it's like, yeah, like it looks pretty amazing. Like it
yeah,
looks pretty
yeah,
neat. So
yeah. They really modernized it. I think this is their effort to try to make Saga like a mainline thing. Like I don't know that just re-releasing all the old games or even the I guess the problem with Scarlet Grace and Emerald Beyond is that they're still very kind of menu based, and there's not a lot of like 3D action happening. Like at least in this one, like
yeah.
you have the dungeons and the towns where your character is actually running around and you can talk to people or you can do the surprise attack on the enemies. Like there's that ability to kind of see your surroundings and soak it all in. And then the lineage mechanic just being a really neat one that was probably more obscure and hard to figure out in the original version of this game, or the uh, remaster that came out a few years ago. I think they're trying to make it just a little bit more approachable, transparent. How do these games actually work? You know, I don't know how Kawatsu feels about his games being
Yeah.
butchered from the original ones. Maybe he might see it that way. I don't
Well,
know, but
unless he was involved, who knows?
that and my guess is he probably would be, right, because he's
He's
had
still around.
he's still
Yeah.
around. He's still at Square Enix. I think he's had at least some kind of like overseeing kind of role, like a Miyamoto, like when he was when he was still kind of overseeing like the Mario games. Not developing per se, but having input for sure.
I
Um,
don't think these games would keep coming out if he wasn't there with and helping. Like I know there was a
exactly,
producer there that was like a big Saga fan and a Quazu fan specifically, and this guy I know was pushing for more Saga and that sort of stuff. But just the fact that he's still there would make. I'm sure he'd love to see his stuff, come to modern consoles and have
for
modern
sure.
audience. I also wonder if they look at like Alliance Alive and look at that and be like, well, there's clearly still an appetite for this game and this type of game, and maybe there's even a little bit of like competition of like, well, we could do better than that. Like, so
Yeah,
here's
exactly. It's a wonder. Like they're gonna try to keep as much as they can the same, but also like what do they need to change to make this more mainstream? I think I wonder if that's the idea. Like how do we
yeah,
take these old school? These are very old school mechanics, but changing the visuals, just making things a little bit harder, sorry, a little bit easier to figure out. Like, how does this game actually play? How do we sell this to people in a trailer, in a review?
yeah.
So I think they're doing it seems like they've kind of nailed that, and I cannot wait to play more. I'm so excited about this game. It's definitely one like October. I'm clearing the slate. As much as I want to play Ease, that might be one I have to wait on because I'm so excited about this game. So, gonna finish Zelda and then probably not take anything else
Oh, October
major.
24.
Yeah, I can't day before, right? Like
Oh man.
it's coming up. Like that's only like 6 weeks away or something like that. But
Yeah.
definitely excited about that. And then yeah, it'll be great to roll into Dragon Quest right after this. I think it's only 3 weeks after. I think it's the 14th for Dragon Quest. So not a ton of time to play these games, but
Yeah,
it'll be
November
a good
14th
cadence.
is is Dragon Quest 3 is the November 14th. So yeah, it's
Right.
like
And
3
then
weeks
where's
after.
Metaphor in there? Like, is that end of November?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely. Let me
If you
see
tell me
here.
October, I'm gonna cry. But
Uh
or,
oh, October
or
10th.
I mean, okay, there's a chance. It's a chance. I could
You
make
have
some
a
good
couple
progress.
weeks to get through
Yeah.
what's likely a 100-hour game before.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I'd really have to power through that. And if we had a review code for Romancing Saga, it'd probably be around that time, honestly. So yeah, it'll be tricky. Maybe I'll play Metaphor on, if I'm playing it on PS5, then I've got the other games on Switch. That would be okay because the different platforms can help with the separating out. But at any rate, it was a really great appointment at Square Enix. I was really excited to check out those three games, and yeah, just to kind of see how my expectations were kind of either met or exceeded or fell down a little bit. Like that's why we do this, right? That's why we do preview events and try to play games early and see what we think. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how other people feel about these games as we get closer to their releases in October, November. And Fantasia, I don't know, it feels like a December game, with Square Enix always wanting to kind of put everything all in like a 3 month window, but I could see it being January, February too. So it's just got a winter 2024 window right
Yeah,
now.
they
It's
just
late.
got Q4 2024. That
Yeah,
this feels
yeah.
like a game that'll probably get pushed into 2025
I could see it.
potentially.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Give some breathing space to Romancing Saga and Dragon Quest, and yeah, let this one be your first 2025 bigger game.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was PAX West. I know I kind of went off a little bit here on these games, but yeah, it was fun to check them all out. And played lots of RPGs. Kind of prioritized a little bit more on the RPG side this time, knowing that there's not a ton of games from big publishers for the end of this year. We got Astrobot just came out for Sony, and I think that's pretty much it for them. Microsoft has Indiana Jones in December, but that's kind of, other than Call of Duty, which is coming to both, right? Like there's not a ton of
Yeah.
huge AAA games coming out. So it seemed like a good chance to check out some more RPGs and AA type games. And so, yeah, a lot of good ones that I played here that I'm eager to see more of.
Yeah, well, that's definitely basically my Christmas wish list has just been growing throughout the
Yep.
last hour.
Yeah,
So
yeah, good. Yeah, happy to happy to help out with maybe planning out people's fall gaming schedule, which
yeah,
for me it definitely had to adjust. Is probably going to adjust a little bit further. You know how it is. There might even be some smaller games, some indies that get announcements for coming out too that we'll want to check out. So, got to
yeah,
be fluid, got to be able to adjust on the fly, and so that's what we do here.
yeah,
But I think that'll take us to the end of the episode here. And gosh, it's been such a long time since you and I podcasted, David. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we made some time for this, and hopefully get back to a regular cadence with us chatting about games. I know we want to. I'm trying to think what else we were planning to talk about. I'd like to talk about Zelda when we get closer to that. Maybe do an impressions of Zelda episode for the end of September. You had mentioned another RPG that we were going to chat about.
Oh, you'll have to remind me which one.
Yeah,
There's too
sorry.
many.
I think we're probably going to talk about Renatus. That's Renatus
Oh yeah,
one I
yeah,
was
that's it.
thinking about,
Yeah,
because
the Furyu game.
I
Yep,
think we're both going to play that. That it's one I saw at PAX, but I didn't get hands on with it. So I'm curious to see reviews of that game and impressions and check it out.
yep. Comes out 2 weeks as of the recording. So
That's right. Yeah. So that'll be a game. If I don't finish it, definitely want to play it, and then roll right into Zelda after that. So the end, our end of September is already penciled in here, I think.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be a podcast if our schedule didn't get bended at some point though. So
Sure.
every all the laid best, all the best plans always get
That
railroaded at
that's
some
our
point.
that's our motto here. I think
Yep.
we're gonna have the banner hanging at the Thirsty Mage for that. Yeah,
Yep.
but thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks for listening to some PAX impressions and David's thoughts on Sword of Mana. Um, I imagine by the time you get to the end of it, Dave, you can give us a follow up on that. How you found the end of the game, if you're able to, if you were gonna end up going through the whole thing there. But we've got more goodness coming up. David and I will be on more episodes going forward. We appreciate everybody's patience as David was obviously dealing with some stuff there, and we're trying to get back to our regular schedule. But we do look forward to recording these episodes and getting back on the Discord and hearing from folks there. We have a Discord that's always great to chat with people there. And if you're looking for a like-minded community of RPG fans, look no further than the Thirsty Mage Discord. But yeah, hope everyone has a really great week ahead. More impressions, reviews, thoughts to come from us, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
Bye.